seen the film Babette's Feast? Remember that? Based on a novel by Isaac Denison. It starts, if you haven't seen it, with a portrait of two elderly and pious Christian sisters. Martina, who is named after Martin Luther, and Philippa, who is named for Luther's friend and biographer, Philip Melanchthon. They live in a small village on a very remote but beautiful part of a barren, chilly western coast of Jutland in the 19th century. Philippa and Martina are the daughters of a pastor who has founded his own strict Christian sect. Though the pastor himself has long died when this movie takes place and the sect draws no new converts, these aging sisters preside lovingly over their dwindling brood of white-haired rural resident believers. The film drops back in time to depict how each sister was in their youth a ravishing beauty, each courted by an impassioned suitor visiting Jutland. Martina by a young army officer, Philippa by a recuperating star baritone from the Paris Opera, who after hearing her voice is convinced that she could be a great diva. But the beautiful daughters each turn down their respective suitors out of loyalty to their father. Many years later, the minister father has been long dead and the sisters are aged themselves. And this mysterious woman arrives on their doorstep. She carries only a letter from Philippa's former suitor explaining that she is a refugee from counter-revolutionary bloodshed in Paris, and he's recommending her as a housekeeper. So the sisters take Babette in, and she spends 14 years as their cook. A modest but benign figure who gradually eases their lives and the lives of many in this little village. Her only link to her former life is a lottery ticket that a friend in Paris renews for her every year without fail. And then one day she wins the lottery with its prize of 10,000 francs. And so she decides to spend the entire amount for one magnificent feast for the sisters and their small congregation. It's on the occasion of the birthday of that would have been the 100th birthday of that founding pastor. And it turns out that Babette had been a gourmet cook in her former life. And she begins to order the finest foods available, and the sisters invite all of the elderly members of the Father's church. Martina's former suitor, now a famous general, reappears as one of the guests. His aunt is a member of the flock, and he comes to the feast with a heavy heart, wondering if his whole life as a soldier had been a waste, questioning whether anything he had done since he lost his true love many years ago had even been worthwhile. Much of the charm of this film is found in the sensuality of the food preparation and how invited guests begin to experience ecstasy in delicious course after course after course. The film is a lavish testimony to the sacramental nature of a meal shared in love. And moved by the ecstasy of the experience, the general rises to propose a toast. And he begins by quoting Psalm 85. Mercy and truth have met together, justice and peace shall kiss one another. He continues, man in his weakness and short-sightedness believes he must make choices in this life. He trembles at the risks he takes, but there comes a time when your eyes are opened, and we come to realize that mercy is infinite. We need only await it with confidence and then receive it with gratitude. Mercy imposes no conditions. For mercy and truth are met together, and justice and peace shall kiss one another. Truth and mercy have met each other. Justice and peace shall kiss. Now, we don't have to pin down the exact meaning of each word of the psalmist to feel how all of the words converge to affirm and bear witness to the single unifying reality of God's grace. In this psalm, Israel testifies to God's eagerness to restore and revive God's people by healing all brokenness, by reconciling all things that are separated. This God, the God we worship, intends something whole and good and joyous for every part of God's creation. Mercy and truth have met each other. Justice and peace shall kiss. Like the aged general Babette's feast, we tremble in our own weakness and short-sightedness. We may feel more than challenged by the constant either-or decisions that life throws at us. But many of the problems we face as individuals and as a community of faith are not, in fact, either-or choices. Choices between one good thing or another. Rather, they are things that need to be held in balance in the creative tension of both and rather than either or. Like mercy and truth. We're called as Christians to speak truth in love. But yeah, how difficult can that be? All of us can probably recall a time when we lambasted somebody with what we perceived to be the truth, and love was nowhere in sight. Or the reverse, we have avoided the truth that needs to be spoken in a relationship out of a mistaken belief that loving someone means never challenging a behavior. Psalm 85 reminds us that God promises to work for our transformation so that truth and mercy may meet in us. And what would justice and peace kissing be like? Paul Tillich once wrote that love without justice can be weak sentimentality, and justice without love can be brutal tyranny. Anyone on the front lines of the struggles for human rights knows the danger of either or. Martin Luther King knew it. In fact, in one of the most significant Christian documents of the civil rights movement, his letter from Birmingham jail, he decried love without justice in the form of a group of liberal white clergy who were urging people to withdraw from the marches and demonstrations because they called it unwise and untimely. King rebuked his colleagues with these words: "I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who are more devoted to order than justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice." As a congregation, you who were on the front lines of seeking full inclusion within our denomination for our lesbian and gay siblings, you know about the false prophets who cried out for keeping peace in the church at all costs. Not yet. It's not time. And if we want peace, true peace, not simply the status quo, we must work for justice. Again, I'm intrigued by the psalmist's intuition that God's grace and salvation is found in the convergence of opposites. But it's hard work. to hold these values in tension with one another. Mahatma Gandhi once defined the 7 deadly social sins as politics without principle. Have we seen some of that lately? Wealth without work, commerce without morality, pleasure without conscience, education without character, science without humanity, and finally, worship without sacrifice. The great community organizer Saul Alinsky taught generations of organizers that those who work for social change must exist in that creative tension between the world as it is and the world as it should be. As Christians, that's exactly where you and I live. In the tension between the vision of God's world and the world in which we live and breathe. Between justice and peace shall kiss, and Palestinians and Israelis unable, unwilling, incapable of negotiating a peace that honors and protects each side. Between the lion and the lamb shall lie down together, and the religious fundamentalists of every ilk preaching intolerance, jihad, and anti-Semitism and fear, all in the name of God. Between the nations shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and a world rife with wars and rumors of war, with Houthis in Yemen and Assad in Assyria, 17 years of war in Afghanistan, 15 in Iraq, with almost 7,000 U.S. soldiers killed, not to mention over 700,000 civilian deaths. Truth and mercy shall meet, justice and peace will kiss. As the people of God, we have been entrusted not only with keeping the vision alive, but with working to bring that vision to fruition, to fullness here, now, not just someday later somewhere else. How? First and foremost, by resisting the siren call of cynicism that just eats the soul away. And then by getting busy. By helping a young child bridge the achievement gap in downstairs in creative learning. By being part of the mission work week to Puerto Rico next May. By being trained as a hospice volunteer. By providing transportation to medical appointments through Fish of Stamford. Or helping to feed the hungry at Pacific House or the Soup Kitchen or Meals on Wheels, by absolutely being sure to cast your vote on November 6th, and before that to help others register new voters. And by starting the very hard work of peacemaking that begins in our own heart and life, so that we too might discover what the general discovered. There comes a time when your eyes are opened. And we come to realize that mercy is infinite. For mercy and truth are met together, and justice and peace shall kiss. So that we might also join the psalmist in living the hope and anticipation of that day when heaven and earth will be full of harmony and God will be in all. And because if not us, who? And if not now, when? Amen.